pace in a year in the third quarter as a property crisis and trade tensions are hurting demand, leaving policymakers with the daunting challenge of rebalancing GDP drivers towards greater consumption over time. Now, data showcases that China's GDP has grown 4.8% in the July to September quarter. This is slowed from the 5.2% recorded in the second quarter earlier this year. Now, renewed trade tensions with Washington have highlighted vulnerabilities of China's economy, which relies rather heavily on manufacturing and overseas demand as well. All of this has raised expectations that Chinese leaders may embrace changes to rebalance growth towards domestic consumption. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gerald Ulfil. We are witnessing a property crisis in China. There were some rather shocking visuals of a lot of these high-rise buildings that were constructed being demolished as well. At the same time, apart from its domestic demand reducing, China is also facing pressure from the United States of America. We also know that the Chinese leadership is drafting the 15th five-year plan. How do you think they should go about doing this, and what, in your assessment, should be incorporated so that the growth bounces back?
Yes, China faces multiple challenges here in this case. As you mentioned, the property sector, which needs support, which has received already state support. If I was China, I would invest in existing infrastructure. I was in China, for example, earlier in August, and I'll give an example. The Shanghai International Airport is now massively expanded. You can see it when you take off, and it's fantastic to see. But this is new investment. This is new infrastructure. However, the existing infrastructure needs also a revamp. Roads have to be renovated. Streets have to be renovated. We need also more renovation in the ports in China. Also, China should stop the brain drain. Many young Chinese still want to work abroad, go abroad, study abroad. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they stay. But China should make China great again by showing this is a place to be for the young generation to pursue the career at home. And regarding the pressure from the US, this is true, this is in place, but this will bring China and India much closer together as we saw before. We saw the détente between China and India. We saw the visit by His Excellency Mr. Modi in Beijing during the military parade. So this will continue, that China will reach out to his closer allies like China and Russia anyway. But also the Belt and Road Initiative will be strengthened. The new Silk Road, which brings together, economically integrates China with South Asia, East Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe.
And indeed, I also wanted to understand from you, considering the fact that, the Chinese manufacturing sector is so integrated with the global markets as well, how could then the statistic that we're seeing then reflect, and what are its implications for the global supply chains?
The global supply chains have to be strengthened from all sides. There must be also easing of tariffs or removal of roadblocks and restrictions from, for example, the European Union, from India, of course, or India started already. There will be now direct flights again between China and India. So the global supply chain must be in place in order to avoid a hard landing of the global economy. But the integration of manufacturing, as you say, must be strengthened also by China, must be further developed, and must be increased in relation to productivity. That can be done, and this is already done through AI, through drones, through robotics. China is leading in delivery drones globally, and also in robotics, intelligent robotics in the industrial sector. So this is not only a duty to be done by China, but also by other parts of the world, the main trade partners in Europe, in the Middle East, for example, but also from the United States.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift our focus to more developments. We're now learning that Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged greater efforts towards reunification in a congratulatory message to the new head of Taiwan's main opposition party, whose election has now come amid allegations of Chinese interference. Former Taiwan Legislative One member Cheng Li-Wu will assume leadership of the Kuomintang Party, or the KMT, on the 1st of November. He won the election amid growing tensions between China and Taiwan, the former which claims the democratically governed island as its own. Taiwan's government has rejected China's claims over its sovereign territory. Meanwhile, the KMT traditionally supports stronger ties with China and is seen as a preferred dialogue partner by Beijing. China, meanwhile, has refused to engage with Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te and the Democratic Progressive Party government, labeling it a separatist government. Xi Jinping, in his role as the head of China's Communist Party, has told Cheng that both parties should strengthen their common political foundation. He's in fact added that both parties should unite the broad majority of people in Taiwan to deepen exchanges and cooperation, promote common development, and advance national reunification. Cheng, meanwhile, in a message to Xi Jinping, did not mention any union with China but stated that both sides of the Taiwan Strait are members of the Chinese nation. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Venus Upadhyay. She is a Taiwanese affairs expert joining us from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. A lot is being said about this messaging itself as it comes as these elections are taking place, whether it is simple posturing or not. It's of course taking place as we're seeing increased aggression along the median line itself. And I wanted to understand from you, how is then Xi Jinping's renewed call for reunification being perceived by the public and political leaders within Taiwan, particularly in light of the recent opposition leadership changes?
Thank you, Pia. And it's lovely to be here this morning. Actually, whatever is happening right now is not happening for the first time. It has happened before. These kind of statements from both sides of the strait have happened earlier also. KMT's stand has been the same. So with the new opposition leader, obviously, the statement that Chinese leader Xi Jinping gave yesterday was obviously reiterating what China has said earlier as well, and what has been the KMT stand earlier as well. So there's basically no change in it. But yes, it's a repetition of it. It's a reinforcing of the same China one policy. And it's repeating the same stand that KMT has had for long. Now, since Xi Jinping's statement has just come yesterday, today the Taiwanese newspapers haven't yet carried much of analysis as to what the Taiwanese people are thinking. So I think we can wait for a week and, say how the media responds here or how the people are reacting. But actually, the truth is that Taiwan's domestic politics kind of reflects a lot. If you see, the national government is led by DPP, and a lot of local governments are basically led by the KMT. Mm-hmm. So I think the Taiwanese are a very, very politically aware population, and they understand, they understand the cross-strait politics much more than anybody else in the world, because they are experiencing it day in and day out. And as I said, this is not the first time that they're facing any messaging like this from across the strait or from within the, politicians from within Taiwan.
Indeed, and I also wanted to understand, given the current geopolitical climate and Taiwan's growing ties, especially with Western allies such as the United States, how should then the new opposition leadership navigate this pressure from China without undermining Taiwan's democratic values?
You see, Taiwanese domestic politics is a very complex, dynamic, dynamic sphere, I would say. And I would also say that a lot of narrative about Taiwan in the media is always about cross-strait affairs, whereas I think there is very less focus on the domestic politics. I'm talking about the international media, the domestic politics of Taiwan. And if you look at the entire running of affairs here, you see that the next year there's going to be another election, and that's what the newly elected leader has also said, that she's going to focus more on that. So next year's election would elect the mayors and the councillors in various cities and towns. So now another thing that has happened in Taiwan is there was something happening called vote recall. So where you go around Taiwan, you go around Taipei, outside a lot of subway stations, you're actually seeing people with these placards where they were recalling the elected legislatures, and these legislatures from both the parties. So, there were recall campaigns for the DPP legislatures, and there were recall campaigns for the KMT legislatures. And this was a very interesting democratic process. So just because one political party in Taiwan is saying that it believes in, reunification, and it believes in a certain narrative on China, that doesn't mean that Taiwan becomes any less democratic society. So from 1997 onwards, Taiwan has made a lot of efforts to strengthen its democratic institutions. It had that space to basically make a lot of experiments. So I don't really see that in any way the democratic institutions in Taiwan are suffering because, certain statements or certain messages coming like that. I would say that this has been a long-term stand. This is not the first time this messaging has come. It has come before also. So I think we should make more effort in understanding from now onwards is in the next elections, how would this reflect, whatever messaging is coming, how would this reflect, and what is the mandate that public would give next year? That would give a clear picture.
Indeed, as you've mentioned, we've seen this sort of cross-strait rhetoric earlier as well. So I wanted to understand from you, then, is this mere posturing on Beijing's end, or because experts have recently warned that China is preparing to invade Taiwan, is this then indicative of more to come in the upcoming years?
See, as I said, such a messaging is not new. It has happened before. Xi Jinping himself has, said the same thing many times before. KMT has said the same thing many times before. So again, I'm saying that this is not the first time such a messaging is coming. And I think for the past many, many years, all of us have been hearing about this, expected or the estimated time frame of when this Taiwanese invasion is going to happen. And somewhere it's a reality as well, because when you're living in Taiwan, you see that, there are a lot of public exercises that the government has scheduled during the year when the, government prepares its population for any kind of a war scenario, whether they are air raids, so, the sirens blow, the messages come on your phone, and there are many mock drills, public mock drills, civil and government coordination mock drills, defense civil coordination mock drills that happen across Taiwan. So I think Taiwan as a society, what is very fascinating about this society is, they're just like 2.3 million people, 23 million people, 2.3 crore people. And, you look at their scientific advancement, you look at their technological advancement, their trade advancement, their foreign reserves are over $400 billion. It's just about $100 billion less than India, which is a population of over 1.4 billion people. And so in that way, we have to look at the geopolitics that frames Taiwan. And even when you say about geopolitics and you start to understand Taiwan from the US perspective, and we have to obviously consider semiconductors. We obviously have to consider Taiwan's tech advancement.
Yes.
So I think Taiwan is a very, very dynamic society. I think it's like a gray zone society. It knows how to survive. It has learned how to survive. It has survived all this while. These calls for invasion, reunification, is not new. Taiwan's process to become democracy hasn't been an easy process itself. So I think Taiwanese appreciate that. The Taiwanese know that. The Taiwanese also understand the reality of invasion and threats from across the border. And I think day in and day out in their life, they have learned how to address it, how to face it, and how to survive. And they are surviving. You know, look at other countries of the world who have faced such kind of threats. Who has such kind of scientific advancement or such kind of foreign reserves or such kind of wealth? You know, the average salary per person in Taiwan is almost about 30,000 NDT. It's between 29,000 NDT, 30,000 NDT, which comes to close about 90,000 Indian rupees. You know, and so that's the kind of advancement, you know, that has happened. So I think the world should not just look at this Taiwan from this frame of, you know, what is happening across the strait and what are the messaging that is coming. I think that they'll keep on happening, you know, until and unless this cross-strait geopolitics remains. You know, so Taiwan, the position and the location of Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific is vital to many countries, is vital to the world.
Absolutely.
So in this geopolitical frame, China is not going to stop giving the messages it will give. China will obviously, you know, PRC will obviously root for its interest and its agendas and its policies. And Taiwan in the current geopolitical frame will always obviously root for wherever it perceives its interest. But that doesn't mean that the domestic politics of Taiwan is going to be anyway, you know, less contested or less exciting or, you know, less whatever say. There's a lot of polarity, obviously. There's a lot of polarity of messages. So I think we should widen our perspectives on Taiwan and look at Taiwan's domestic politics, look at Taiwan's process of how its democracy has evolved, look at how Taiwan's semiconductor or industrial development has happened, you know, since 1997, since it became a democracy. And then I think we should widen our perspective as to how this Taiwanese society has survived, and not only survived, but prospered amidst such calls of invasion or threats or reunification or, you know, from whatever narrative perspective you call it, whether you take China's narrative or you take, you know, the free world narrative, the Taiwanese have survived and thrived. So I think we should try to understand that. And then in that perspective, we should try to understand Taiwan's domestic politics.
Absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you, ma'am, for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. With that, viewers,